When's the last time you saw a movie star on the cover of Wheaties box? Never. This is the level of greatness that we're thinking of. Imagine Marty Mauser.
I don't know that there's a filmmaker today who operates on nearly the level of stress-laden intensity that Josh Safdie injects into his films. Really, I would have said the Safdie brothers, but when we're comparing Benny and Josh's divorce projects here, I mean, Josh Safdie is the Safdie brothers. And I say that with no disrespect to Benny Safdie and what he did with The Smashing Machine. I enjoyed that film a good bit. But man, he's got this William Friedkin, Sidney Lumet-like fearlessness and balls to the wall yet natural approach to telling gritty, DIY narratives in big American metropolises, or in Safdie's case, a specific eye for telling stories in a literal New York minute. Now, of course he's done most of his work alongside his brother Benny. Good Time in particular was like a megaphone announcing the revival of new Hollywood-type adventure in indie cinema, the return of the grimy crime drama steered by complicated at best and unlikable at worst characters. Uncut Gems continued this streak with an almost nihilistic take on gambling and risk-taking addictions, again, centered on a guy who, well, he's not quite as unlikable, but he's still not the easiest guy to feel sorry for.
I disagree. But
now, piloting the ship solo, Josh Safdie has reached the pinnacle of his method of storytelling in Marty Supreme. Oh baby. It's not strictly a crime drama, but it falls in line with Josh Safdie's penchant for stories about high-intensity, high-risk men who are chasing something. Money, a high, a breakout, being the best in the world at what you do. The saga of not entirely fictional ping-pong phenom Marty Mauser's fight to be the best in the world, where his biggest opponent is his own ego and impatience, is not just the completion of a trifecta of these stories for Josh Safdie. It's his pinnacle as a storyteller to date, and Marty Supreme achieves this in no small part because it also represents the truest distillation of Timothee Chalamet as an actor. He not only gives his greatest performance, but it is in direct conversation with his widely publicized drive to be one of the greats, which really came to the forefront during his awards campaign for A Complete Unknown last year.
I'm really in pursuit of greatness.
This dogged pursuit of a dream of greatness burdened by the need for validation. All the greats in any field have it, but when you're an artist, a showman in the arena of subjectivity, you need the response of an audience, the rewards of the box office, the accolades voted upon by your peers to prove you aren't washed. You have to sell people on the idea time and time again. The very thing cross-examined by Safdie's solo venture here. Because performances, arts, can't be judged on objective merits, both Chalamet and Safdie surmise that the need for authenticity to experience something real is essential to achieving the dream, breaking the vicious cycle of the American dream and becoming great. To not play the game as designed, and by the looks of Marty Supreme's marketing campaign and insane merch/hype tour, the last thing you can say about Timmy is that he's being inauthentic. In fact, one could argue him even vocalizing his personal mantra is precisely the kind of refreshing honesty this industry needs more of. He's simply saying what most of his peers are already thinking. It's not an admission of ego, but rather an admission of ambition, of determination. Through this, Josh Safdie and Timothee Chalamet serve up a goddamn heater, crafting one of the best films of the decade in Marty Supreme, a film that challenges artifice in the face of authenticity and the belief that, above all else, people want to experience something real. It's the perfect mantra to sum up the Safdie method of storytelling and filmmaking.
What do you plan to do if this whole dream of yours doesn't work out?
It doesn't even enter my consciousness.
Safdie characters are addicts. They're reluctant to change, obsessively chasing a high of some sort kept just barely out of reach, and they'll resort to pretty skeevy methods to get it. People who can't accept being less than they believe they are, spiraling into a vicious cycle, like Elsa in Last Crusade desperately trying to grasp the grail that's just out of reach until it inevitably destroys them.
I can reach it. I can reach it.
Give me your hand. Give me your other hand.
Desperation is at the heart of these characters.
Robert Pattinson. Shwap!
Connie Nikas tears through nocturnal New York with feral desperation, leaving destruction in his wake as he tries to save a brother he genuinely loved but constantly endangers. But he's both a slacker and an arrogant, pompous jerk who always sees himself as the main character in any room. You become disillusioned and then disgusted with Connie as good time unfolds.
Adam Sandler. Tiff. Standing ovation. Shwap!
Howard Ratner isn't as high and mighty. In fact, he's shown to have a pretty big heart for his kids and his girlfriend and even his customers, you know, if they're Kevin Garnett. But he's consumed by his gambling addiction, his greed, and nothing takes precedence over chasing the high of a big win against losing everything. These are people operating on the margins of society, absolute messes trying to scrape by and get what they think is theirs. They're deplorable, manipulative, generally not very good people, but there's something about them we're drawn to, an authenticity, a realism, a grit that captivates us even as it horrifies. They feel real because they're composites of the kind of people Josh knew all too well growing up in New York. Things end badly. Really badly for both of these guys. What's most fascinating is that Connie's downfall makes us cheer, whereas Howard's quick and painless murder is almost a relief. It might suck to see him hit it big and then immediately have that ecstasy capped, but let's be real, this was never going to end well for him.
Imagine Marty Mauser. Shwap!
Marty Mauser is in conversation with both characters in about equal proportion. He's like Connie in that he's kind of an asshole about himself and his abilities and in how he creates most of the worst situations he finds himself in, then has to resort to desperate measures to escape by the skin of his teeth. But he's also like Howard in his need for a high, in this case, global greatness rather than being a big gambling payout. He's a skilled manipulator with little regard for the collateral damage he creates. He ruins people's lives, usually the people closest to him, allowing his obsession to overtake his humanity. He's an asshole, plain and simple. He's kind of a horrible person, might be irredeemable, might be. But here's where Marty diverges from his Safdie predecessors. He finds a way out on the other side. He learns, he grows. Where Connie ends up in prison and Howard ends up dead, Marty comes to understand that he doesn't simply have to be, in his own words, the ultimate product of Hitler's defeat. He doesn't have to use his community's suffering as an excuse to justify giving himself a higher purpose. This is what makes Marty Supreme the culmination rather than just another chapter. Josh Safdie has finally given us a protagonist who breaks the cycle. What Josh Safdie does so well is hone in on a 20-year-old white guy who feels the world owes him everything and mistakes that entitlement for hard work. Marty is the embodiment of toxic hustle culture, the every man for himself mentality that's polluted the minds of young men across generations. He's the Paul brothers, he's every social media bro selling courses on passive income. He's the spiritual godfather of the millennial entrepreneur who believes that all success requires is devotion to a singular idea, a chance to seize glory without enduring the hardships that previous generations faced. That he's above adversity. Marty thinks just because his people endured the worst that humanity has to offer at the hands of the Nazis, he's entitled to act without regard for those around him. He believes he has a higher calling, and anything not in alignment with that calling is lesser than. He's someone who never had to endure the hardships of the Holocaust or serve in World War II, and while that doesn't make him less of a person, he's exploiting that generational trauma to justify his behavior. Marty carries himself like a man collecting on a debt history owes his people. But instead of recognizing the payout was distributed in the lives around him, the community he's a part of, the community he's constantly working to manifest his destiny, he hoards the cash himself, using that legacy as an excuse to live exclusively for himself, making him no different than the Milton Rockwells of the world. Every meal, every loan, every bailout is a contribution to the cause, a 1950s Patreon without the reward tiers, if you will. Seeing that represented in a period piece was kind of awesome, really sobering as well, to see some of my own worst tendencies as a workaholic, as someone who at times toxically pursues their dream realized on screen in the most awful ways possible. It reaffirmed that this is kind of a generational poison. We all have dreams and we all want desperately to make them happen, but there has to be a give and take. You have to put in what you hope to get out. You can't simply skirt by on favors and loans. You'll wind up exhausting all the goodwill, fucked and alone. Capitalism sells you on the idea that all you need is a dream and enough hustle to make it happen, conveniently ignoring how the system is rigged against anyone without a safety net. It keeps people grinding towards a finish line that keeps moving, enriching the people at the top, while everyone else burns out chasing a fantasy. Even if you are Marty Supreme, burn enough bridges and eventually you'll be eaten alive. You see the scrappiness of the world Marty exists in, and despite a boisterous persona and what seems to be international athletic success, he always ends up back at the overcrowded, decrepit brownstone. A lot of it is his own fault, to be fair, but there's no denying he's bought into the seductive post-war lie sold to generation after generation. Marty is a product of that lie, and so is the country that created it. The brilliant thing about how Safdie constructs Marty's journey is that it parallels the journey of the nation he's from. In the grand scheme of things, America hadn't yet undergone any hardship capable of forcing reflection on its own hubris. America had never experienced humility on any kind of grand scale. Maybe save for, the Great Depression, and even then we had the New Deal, and then the war, and then the propagandized perception that we defeated Hitler, when in reality Americans weren't even in Berlin when the war in Europe ended. But don't worry, we dropped a nuke on Japan, the ultimate sign of dominance. That's how we've gotten arrogant and complacent, and why con men have become the faces of our government, pop culture, and society. They keep selling us an artificial greatness. What Marty Supreme does so exceptionally well, without becoming nationalistic or jingoistic, is remind us that authenticity and resilience, the kind of drama that only occurs when your back is against the wall, when you are the underdog, when what you're made of is what's at stake, is exactly what allowed America to come into existence. A country of scrappy revolutionaries being undervalued and discriminated against by a pompous, elitist adversary. That's how independence was won. That's the dream people have been chasing ever since. But those tactics have been co-opted and exploited by the rich and elites who figured out how to sell spectacle, a dream, at the expense of our better interests. We bought into it. We allowed it to happen. We're taught the art of the sell, that in order to be great, you must sell yourself to the system, not the people who comprise it. A perfect antithesis to Chalamet's own approach to selling Marty Supreme, wherein he's appealing to younger generations, moviegoers, the people across countries and continents, by just being himself.
To continue to believe in yourself, to continue to dream big, and to follow your dreams and not take no for an answer. That's the spirit of Marty Supreme, Christmas Day. Marty Supreme, dream big. Marty Supreme, Christmas Day.
Yeah. Marty is a showman. He understands how to play to a crowd, which is why so many people up the ladder approach him for jobs that utilize that ability. But he feels like clowning is beneath him, and utilizing his talents and athleticism to entertain it is not the best representation of him as a person. And yet, he'll indulge in it when he's desperate for money, when he's hit rock bottom, whether hustling people at a local bowling alley, exhibiting tricks at halftime for the Harlem Globetrotters, or playing games with K Stone. The brilliance of Chalamet's performance lies in how Safdie blurs the lines between when Marty is being sincere versus opportunistic, keeping us in suspense as our perception volleys between the two ends of the spectrum. You want to trust that he genuinely is sorry for being a selfish little prick, that he will eventually repay his debts, but this is a Safdie joint, man. We've been fooled before.
Please. I'm begging you, just give me another shot.
The reason Marty is so good at selling is because he's performing in a way that feels real. You find yourself trying to suss out which parts feel real to him and which parts are theater, and that ambiguity is precisely the point. The way he validates, insults, or manipulates others is incisive because he always hits a soft spot. He's the kind of guy who will tell you exactly what you want to hear one moment, and the next, something you need to hear in the most insulting way possible. Constantly the pot calling the kettle black, while tuning out anything other than adoration from his skeptics. K Stone enters the picture, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, and she is a perfect mirror to Marty. She knows Marty is using her because it's exactly what she would do in his position. She has the humility to recognize that she's using Marty as a coping mechanism, as comfort, because he gives her validation and affection in ways her husband doesn't. She's willing to play along with his games because she's an actress, and there's a thrill she gets from performance, especially when it feels real, when they're in a situation that requires them to think on their feet. I love the scene where Marty visits her on stage and clearly points out why her co-star is failing. It's a lack of commitment to the craft, something Marty understands all too well.
I was just saying you didn't really seem like you were in the scene is all.
Marty thinks greatness comes with validation, that in order to be great, you need to be recognized for being great. However, like Kay, he comes to realize that an audience full of people clapping at your mere existence is hollow. It's not real. Sometimes real greatness goes unnoticed. More importantly, the great ones don't seek the limelight. It organically shines on them because they possess immense skill, talent, and the determination that magnetically pulls us toward them. That's Timothee Chalamet. He makes his ambition known, but also makes it known that he's not going to play by Hollywood's rules. Contrast this with Milton Rockwell, played by Kevin O'Leary, in a performance that I'm sad to say is actually very good. I didn't want to give the guy his flowers because goddamn does he suck as a human being, but fuck, this was a brilliant piece of metacasting. He shallowly thinks all Kay wants is praise and applause, so he creates scenarios that allow her to receive adoration. But there's something deflating about it coming from people who don't understand what she's really trying to achieve, people who are paid to be there, essentially. She's trying to accomplish on stage exactly what Marty is doing at the ping pong table. The difference is, she's lived enough life to understand when it's time to settle or sell out in Marty's eyes. That's why Milton sees Marty as a way to promote his product, to exploit the untapped markets of table tennis overseas and sell the Japanese people pens, something they don't really need, while boosting their ego in the process. Marty wants to be recognized on the world stage? Well, he'll give it to him while simultaneously creating a scenario where hubris and pride are manufactured, the lubricant for suckers to spend, fueling the engine of America's greatest and biggest export. Milton also offers Marty reflection as to the methods that he was practicing, exploiting other people to achieve his dream, because his dream is more important than anyone else's well-being. And when Marty is finally on the receiving end of that exploitation, yeah, that's when it finally hits him that you can't do this has gotta stop. Milton offers Marty everything he wants, an opportunity to go to Japan and play table tennis with his nemesis Endo. He's dangling it with the caveat that it comes packaged with humiliation, something Marty would never consider. The Japanese people at that point genuinely needed to feel pride in the fallout of World War II because they were humiliated too, and they organically achieved that when Endo beat Marty in the London Grand Open. That was a grassroots upset victory that brought some pride back to Japan. It should have been a moment for Marty to reflect on his own ego. Instead, he doubles down on his worst tendencies, wheeling and dealing, making false promises, exploiting people's emotions. The addiction to the hustle proved stronger than the lesson humiliation was trying to teach him, at least for a while. There comes a point where Marty's exhausted all of his options, where he has to consider playing Milton's game, selling out, so long as it gets him on a plane to Tokyo and into the tournament. He completely debases himself, crawling on his hands and knees, begging for forgiveness for biting the hand that fed him. For a desperate moment, he doesn't care about having his greatness questioned for a second time. He just wants to be recognized when the third time comes around. Milton forces Marty to drop his pants and submit to degradation. He gets paddled, he gets humiliated. Not only is it an exertion of power, but a brutal reminder of his place in the food chain. The rules don't apply to him as they do for the company he wishes to be a part of, and simply asking for forgiveness isn't enough. Marty's ego shatters. He becomes the clown, degrading himself for the amusement of others, the upper class, the very thing he swore he'd never do in pursuit of his dream. It's in that moment that Marty starts to grow up. He begins to take responsibility, ceases exploiting others, and focuses on what matters most. Marty's growth is born of humiliation. He had to be broken down before he could build himself back up. By the final act, Marty has been stripped of everything. By adhering to the hustle mentality of continually taking and never giving, he's become increasingly isolated. When he needs help, he only has a handful of chances before he's truly on his own. The wealthy elites who Milton represents have disdain for who Marty is and what he does, even if they see utility in the commerce he can make for them. However, Marty is done playing games. Perhaps the way he can give back to his audience is by treating them with enough respect as to give them a real competition. Instead of putting on a show with a predetermined outcome, robbing the spectators of their respect and time, he relies on the intensity and drama of the situation, the showdown between two great competitors acting as emissaries for their respective nations, almost like Rocky IV, to draw people in. He doesn't need to fake it because all of the emotions are real. His need to win is real. His drive is real. The pride of the Japanese people and the ownership they take in table tennis is real. Their need to reclaim honor through victory. When he offers the audience the opportunity to experience a real match, as opposed to one in which they were being sold a piece of propaganda to incentivize them to buy pens, they opt to go with him. Marty learns to play to the crowd not as a manipulator, but as someone who recognizes that he is one of them, an ordinary person in search of something great. And this is his first step in giving it back, in giving the people what they want. That level of authenticity is what drives commerce, not insultingly obvious marketing ploys by boardroom execs. I mean, Jesus Christ, how many times have we seen that fail? You can smell the insincerity, the phoniness on it when it comes in front of you. Marty may have mastered the sell, but no salesman is immune to the allure of the American dream. He thought he was the main character, that the American dream was made for him. But really, he was just another sucker buying what the slogan was selling. But that recognition, that humility, is precisely what allows him to transcend it. His relationship with Rachel embodies this. It's incredibly toxic, don't get me wrong, but there's something within her that's drawn to him. He's magnetic, you can't look away, whether he's playing ping pong or fast talking his way out of a situation. You understand from Rachel's point of view that this guy is kind of full of shit. We're all kind of full of shit. What's captivating about Marty is the confidence with which he carries his bullshit, combined with the fact that she's known him her whole life. And while he bullshits his way to the top, he also has the skill and spirit to make it happen, and that's arguably more important. She's in a marriage that makes her unhappy. She's not satisfied with her lot in life. And while Marty is an incredibly toxic man-child, she understands that at a certain point, this guy's gotta grow up. That's the gamble she's making. And eventually, Marty does grow up. He reciprocates her love, giving back to the woman who stood by him, endorsed his insanity, and helped architect his schemes. For Marty to grow up, he had to be humiliated. He had to be defeated. There's no way he could come home and be a proud father unless he left it all out on the table. Regardless of the outcome, it had to be real, and that humiliation was the first step towards making his dream of being the best, of being great, a reality. Even if it was in an illegitimate setting, it mattered to him, and he got to feel it, even if it didn't come with the pomp and circumstance of being crowned the greatest ping pong player in the world. Daniel Lopatin's score is unreal in this film. It almost functions as a character in and of itself. The Tangerine Dream-inspired synth work evokes the 80s while the film is set in the 50s, and that anachronistic choice communicates the parallel between those decades. Shared mentalities of greed, excess, and hubris. By casting Chalamet as the lead, you incorporate the current moment, too. The toxic traits and mentalities found in young men, the arrogance and the entitlement. Everything Chalamet presents superficially, only to subvert it, revealing his true intentions and the things that make him a once-in-a-generation kind of talent. The score bridges these eras, suggesting that the sickness Marty embodies isn't unique to any single generation, but is baked into the American project itself. Everything Marty fought for was just laying the foundation for a story he'll be a supporting cast member in. He finally understands that he has to be the foundation for another person's dreams, not just the beneficiary of his ancestors' suffering. When everybody wants to rule the world hits at the end, it is one of the most well-earned needle drops of the song that's ever been put to film. It just, it was poetry. It put a smile on my face. It was just, fuck man, movies. For Timothee Chalamet, Marty Mauser strikes a chord because despite his toxicity and immaturity, at his core, he's someone with intense drive who learns humility, who understands the need for authenticity, who's working towards something great without placating the system to get it, and who realizes that he is the sum total of the people in his life and eventually will have to give back. There's a determinism within Marty that you can see directly in Chalamet himself and the projects he chooses. This is Chalamet's best work because it's his most personal. He's not hiding behind period costumes or historical figures. He's channeling the drive that's defined his own career, the hunger that people have seen in every interview, every awards campaign, but also the brazen honesty.
And I know we're in a subjective business. But the truth is, I'm really in pursuit of greatness. I know people don't usually talk like that, but I want to be one of the greats. I'm inspired by the greats. I'm inspired by the greats here tonight. I'm as inspired by Daniel Day-Lewis, Marlon Brando, and Viola Davis as I am by Michael Jordan and Michael Phelps, and I want to be up there. So I'm deeply grateful to that. This doesn't signify that, but it's a little more fuel, it's a little more ammo to keep going.
By doing so, he creates something that feels less like acting and more like confession, a turbulent, thrilling, and honest tale of the pitfalls and ecstasy ambition provides. Marty Supreme is one of the best films of the decade because it challenges us to examine our own relationship with ambition, success, and authenticity. In an era of manufactured content and algorithmic entertainment, it argues for the irreplaceable value of something real. The messier, the better, the Safdie way. Josh Safdie has crafted a film that reminds us that greatness and respect come when you level with people and speak from the heart. Even if you're saying kind of horrible things, if you're saying true things with recognition of your culpability and imperfections, people are more willing to buy in. The pathway to greatness is through defiance, through authenticity, through the willingness to be humiliated and get back up. And at the end of the day, living for something bigger than yourself. Marty Supreme was never about table tennis. It was about life. There have been a lot of great deconstructions of the American dream throughout cinema, but Marty Supreme is the capstone on a singular distillation of it in the form of the Safdie's perfect trilogy, all told in a New York minute.